Hello, everybody. My name is Mike Petralia of CLNS Media, and this is my inaugural experience with the Patriots Beat podcast, and it's my pleasure and my privilege to introduce Steve Balestrieri of PATSfans.com. You saw him a couple of weeks ago. Steve and myself did a video from Patriots camp. Now we're a couple of weeks into Patriots camp. Actually, officially, Steve, Patriots camp has closed to the public after the first preseason game, a 31-24 loss to the Jacksonville Jaguars. And now we are on to the Houston Texans. And I want to get right to it. Some interesting comments today from Julian Edelman. Some interesting comments on Tuesday, the first of two joint practices with the Houston Texans at the Greenbrier Resort in West Virginia. Julian Edelman, I think, really, Steve, summing up exactly what training camp joint practices are all about, saying that this is a great opportunity to get practice with another team and really raise the level of competition. He called it the brother syndrome. He said you go out.
I thought that was fantastic. That was a great way to put it, wasn't it?
I thought so, and he says you go out and your mom's not around, you're with your brother all day, you guys are hanging out, and you guys just end up beating up each other. And when you go out and play with someone else, it's a little different because you get to have fun and you take pride that you're actually closer with your brother now, who is there with you, and you work harder together as a family. And I think what the Patriots are trying to do with so many new faces in camp this time around, and obviously a very talented roster about to take the field for the 2017 Patriots, guys like Stephon Gilmore, obviously Brandon Cooks, Mike Gillislee. A lot of these guys haven't even been on the field yet. We'll get to that in a little bit. But to develop that bond, that chemistry here in the training camp preseason environment, I think is critical because this is a different level than OTAs and minicamp. Would you agree?
Absolutely, and we saw that. I mean, the beginning of training camp, we saw them trying to come together and bond. They were, we saw the players, and sometimes, tempers get a little short, as Edelman put it. Brother against brother. Him and Gilmore had a little dust up, and we see that every year. But it's a great experience for these guys, and I think that this is going to be joint practice session with the Texans is going to make them even better going down the road.
Well, so he was also asked, Steve, about Wes Welker, and I think this is a fascinating dynamic, at least to pay attention to for this week down in Houston, because I mean, obviously we're so New England centric and we're so Patriots focused up here in New England that we don't pay attention to the details of former Patriots in other positions. And what everybody knows about the storylines with obviously Mike Vrabel and Larry Izzo on the Texans coaching staff. But Wes Welker is getting a chance to prove himself as an NFL coach. And asked today if that surprised Edelman. He said, not really. Wes is such a smart, intelligent football player. He played a lot of years, and he's a grinder. Now, the last part of that quote is the one that sticks out to me, Steve, because as an NFL head coach, you've got to be a grinder. This is a job that requires 10 to 12, 14 hours a day, 9 to 10 months a year if you're going to be a good NFL coach.
Yeah, absolutely. And, and Welker had that kind of an attitude as a player. We saw that with the Patriots. He came here in 2007. I mean, when they made the trade for him, there wasn't a lot of, high expectations when he came here. But he put the time in with Tom Brady. Those two were on the same page. That you'd see it just like the relationship he has now with Edelman and Gronkowski. He had with Welker. Those two could just look at each other, recognize what was on the field in front of them, and they could react without having to say anything. And that's the kind of work that he's going to have to put in as a coach, and that's the kind of work he put in as a player. I think he's going to be a good football coach because he does have that mentality.
See, it's interesting you say that because I look at Mike Vrabel, and that guy it has an in-your-face approach, and he will coach techniques. He was even giving Tom Brady some crap on Tuesday during the joint practices, like they used to when they played against each other in practices when they were with the Patriots. I thought that was great. That's a great storyline, but it really speaks to the intensity that Mike Vrabel brings to the coaching position. Wes Welker is a different bird, and I'm just very curious to see whether or not Welker's approach, which is not fire and brimstone, it's anything but, can translate as an NFL coach.
Yeah, absolutely. Those two are, as you said, they're night and day, personality-wise. But I think as a coach, and like any other profession, you have to be yourself. Vrabel is he's that kind of a personality. Welker is more of the cerebral kind of guy, and he's a quieter, lead by example. But I think he knows his job. He knows the position well enough where he can, he'll be able to, bring that across to his young wide receivers. I think he's going to be good at it. I really do. I looked at his work ethic when he was with the Patriots and down the road after he left. He's put the time in, and I think he's going to do that with these young guys as well. I think he's going to be a good coach. We'll have to see.
Well, and it really will come down to how much do these ex-players want to commit themselves to the job of coaching. And I think that is the number one question you always ask when if you're a Belichick, if you're a Billy O'Brien, and you're interviewing a former player, how much does coaching really, really mean to you? Because this is what it's going to require.
Yeah, absolutely. And because you're going to be a teacher now. You're now a teacher, and you have to be able to, put the player in you aside and be able to. And we saw that with Bill Belichick a week ago. You and I were talking about that just earlier offline, and he was getting down into techniques with these young players, and he was showing them, hey, this is the way we do things here. He was teaching them how to block kicks, and he was getting down and dirty with the technique, and this is the angle we want you to do this in. I think Welker will have that kind of attitude as well as Belichick. He's not a real fire and brimstone guy, although he can be at times. We've seen that as well.
There's a big difference, Steve, and you know this, between emotion and intensity and focus. What Belichick is he's incredibly intense, he's incredibly focused, but he's not emotional. And that's the way Belichick gets his message across. The other thing I would say is you're not just a teacher as a coach, you're an evaluator. And that's where I think a lot of these former NFL players who give a minute or two thought to, hey, maybe I do want to coach in the NFL. Then they think about the task at hand of making cold, hard judgments on players that they really like, but may not fit the system that the coaching staff or the head coach wants to implement.
Yeah, absolutely. And, that has to be the toughest job of a head coach, especially with some of these guys. And I've seen some of it on television. You watch these hard knock shows, and you see a guy that pours his heart and soul into trying to make a football team, and it's not for lack of trying for some of these guys, and for the coach to have to bring him in, to tell him, hey, we're going to be letting you go. That has to be the toughest part of a coach's job, I would think. I had a certain kind of parallel aspect to that. I was a teacher for the Green Berets in the Army, and we'd have to tell some of the guys who, put their time in, and you didn't make the cut. And that was a really difficult part. I know for an NFL coach, it has to be even harder.
Right, and that's a great analogy to make, Steve, because I think, whether you're leading an infantry, you're leading Green Berets, or you are leading players in the National Football League, there are tough personnel decisions that have to be made, and not everybody is on the team, and not everybody can make the team. And, that's one thing I think people forget about the National Football League. In an age of sensitivity and trying to be, I think, sometimes politically correct with what you say and what you do. And it's still a league of hard, cold decisions that have to be made. And sometimes feelings are going to get hurt, and sometimes dreams are going to be broken. And that's just any player who enters into an NFL training camp whose name is not Tom Brady or Rob Gronkowski or Brandon Cooks has to understand that.
Yeah, and that's the one thing I think Bill Belichick has, that's his reputation that, even guys like Mike Vrabel, who, from all accounts, Belichick loved Mike Vrabel. But when he felt like he didn't have it anymore, he didn't hesitate to trade him. And, he's pulled other guys aside and let them go. That's the cold, hard business side of this. There's only 32 teams in the NFL, and there's only 53 guys on each team. That's not very many. And unfortunately, a lot of these guys' dreams are going to come to an end. I mean, the Patriots have 90 guys on the roster. They're only going to keep 53 of them. 37 guys are going to go home with a long face.
Let me ask you something. Let's move on to two players that I think are going to come under closer and closer scrutiny as we approach the second preseason game and as we move on into preseason if they don't get on the field, namely Mike Gillislee on the offensive side of the ball and Stephon Gilmore on the defensive side of the ball. Obviously, two new faces. Gillislee, still, according to many reports that you read, dealing with a bit of a hamstring that he had early in OTAs, as a matter of fact. He's still dealing with that a little bit. And then Stephon Gilmore. The question I have for you, Stephen, you watch these guys very closely in training camp. How concerned are you, or when do you start to become very concerned about their ability to hit the ground running for the regular season?
Yeah, with Gillislee, I think that they're just being cautious, and it's probably still sore with him, that hamstring. But, when he would go down into the lower field and, the fans hear about this all the time online, and you'll hear, once practice started, so-and-so retreated to the lower practice field with the training staff. Well, I was watching Gillislee do some running with the training staff, and I think I'm not really concerned right now. I think if this lingers on into the regular season, I think it will be time to be concerned with that. But it seemed like it's more of a precautionary tale with him. Now, with Stephon Gilmore, today was the first day that he hadn't practiced, and we don't know what his status is. If he can't go, that's a huge blow, I think, because you're looking at a guy paired with Malcolm Butler who could be one of the best cornerback tandems in the league if he's healthy. If he's not healthy and he can't go out and practice, it's going to be a huge blow to this defense.
Well, and let's also caution people that the Patriots are not required to issue any type of injury report during the preseason. NFL teams are not required to issue injury reports until 72 hours before week one of the regular season. So we understand that. We get all of that. But still, when you don't see a player practicing, I'd say that's even more of a concern than when you don't see a player in a preseason game. Because Belichick values these practices as gold. He said as much last week when he talked about the opportunities in joint practices with the Jaguars to get reps for players, the 40 players who didn't play, who suited up but did not play against the Jaguars, led by Tom Brady and Brandon Cooks and Julian Edelman and the like. Certainly, Belichick wants to get these guys on the practice field so he can work with them. When they're not on the practice field, to me, that's when the red flags go up.
Absolutely, and in that same vein, the one guy I'm worried about right now is Nate Solder, who hasn't been practicing. He's been dinged up, and we've seen both Cameron Fleming and Adrian Waddle, and now Waddle got hurt today. He didn't finish practice, but both of those guys had some issues last week against the Jacksonville Jaguars, and now they're playing a team in Houston that has a tremendous front seven. And, if Solder is going to be able to go and now Waddle's banged up, that's going to put the quarterbacks in a little bit of distress this weekend.
Well, and I got to tell you, Belichick, if that's the case, and you have Jadeveon Clowney and J.J. Watt, and they're starting, I'm certainly Belichick would talk to Billy O'Brien about this, but I don't think you expose Tom Brady to that at all. I don't think.
No, I wouldn't. Not for a preseason game. I think, and if that's the case and Brady's out there, you're just going to hand the ball off a whole heck of a lot and let the chips fall where they may. But, you don't want to subject Tom Brady to that. And I guess their linebackers were really active today. Whitney Merciless, I heard, had a really big day. And one of their rookies, I'm drawing a blank on his name right now, but this is. I'm actually more concerned with the shoulder injury than I am with the other two guys right now. I'll leave it at that as a caveat.
Yeah, and you know what? I mean, these injuries are nowhere near approaching what the Miami Dolphins are going through. Obviously, they lost another cornerback today to a torn Achilles, so they're up against it. And the rest of the division is just a mess, and I think everybody knows that. I think what the Patriots are trying to do, and wisely so, is they're trying to pace themselves and make sure that they have the right healthy bodies to start the regular season. And, I wrote about it earlier this week on CLNS Media and CLNSradio.com that obviously Bill Belichick knows better than anybody else how to really manipulate the preseason and get out of it what he really needs. Now, I know you, for PATSfans.com, Steve, do a wonderful job of breaking down the projected 53-man roster. A lot of people do it. I think you have one of the best projections out there, and I urge fans to go to PATSfans.com and check out your weekly projections on what the roster will look like. We want to talk a little bit now about the back end of the roster and some of the players. They could be rookies, they could be rookie free agents, or just veteran newcomers who are going to be trying to, like mad in these last 3 weeks, to earn a roster spot. Who sticks out to you?
Well, I think the one guy that sticks out to everybody has been Austin Carr. We watched him early in training camp. He seemed to shine every day. He'd have a couple of big impact plays every day. And then he went through a little bit of a day or two where he was having trouble getting some separation, but then he's picked it back up. I thought last week against the Jaguars he was outstanding in both practices. I really liked what I saw from him. And then, of course, in the game, he had the big catch in the end zone from Jimmy Garoppolo during the 2-minute drill. I think that was fantastic. That's the kind of the play you look for in a veteran. So, for a guy like Carr, who was undrafted, he didn't hurt his chances at all last week. I really liked what I've seen from him. Another guy who's really up against it, he seems to make plays every day from the secondary, is Kenny Moore. It seems like every day we're writing something about Kenny Moore. He made a really nice play breaking up a pass, and he's going to have a real tough time of making this roster as well.
Well, I'll give you another name, and obviously his name was all over the place after the Jacksonville game, and that's Jacob Hollister. 6 catches on 8 targets for 115 yards. He didn't find the end zone, but he took some hits that were absolutely brutal and Gronk-esque. I mean, hits that would make Rob Gronkowski and his brother Glenn both blush on the sidelines. I mean, they were just really brutal hits, and he held on to the ball. And, if you're evaluating talent and you're evaluating players' ability to get open and really make a play when the play's there to be made, that has to stick out to you.
He's a really good kid, and you get to talk with him. And I said to him, I was like, hey, when you were in Wyoming, they kind of stretched the field down the seams with you. And he just started laughing at the time because he's like, right now, all I want a chance to do is get out and play. It doesn't matter to me what they ask me to do. But, it would be kind of sweet. And then in the first preseason game, they attacked the seams with this guy, and that's what he does. I mean, he's not a big tight end in the Gronk mold. He's more of a move tight end. He's not a big guy, as tight ends go. But, I was really happy what I saw from him, and he's really excited for his chance. When we talked to him after practice, he mentioned the 15 or 16,000 people that were there at the Patriots training camp, and he said that's what they used to get in Wyoming for a home game. So,
well, I mean, it's just such a great story to see a guy like that, Jacob Hollister, get an opportunity, and when he gets the opportunity, he makes plays that really make your eyes pop a little bit, and that's what you got to do if you're an undrafted player like he is, to make an NFL roster.
Yeah, and I don't think he hurt his chances at all with what we saw on Thursday night against the Jaguars. In fact, with O'Shaughnessy and Matt Lengo banged up a little bit, he could conceivably, work his way into that third tight end position. Eventually, it'll come down to what Bill wants, and we know this. I mean, does he want that third tight end to be a blocking guy, a big body that he can put into the offensive line as an extra lineman, or would he rather have another guy that could be a weapon in the passing game? And if that's the case, then his chances of making the roster go up really, really high.
Any other players that stick out to you, whether they're veterans or not, who may be a surprise cut? I know a lot of people have thrown out the name Coney Ely as somebody who, boy, does not look for the life of him that he is engaged in what the Patriots are trying to coach him in terms of how they edge rush, but how you also have to back off into coverage if need be. I'd heard stories that coaches have told him, this is the way we want you to do it, and he answers by saying, well, I'm not used to doing it this way. This is the way I did it in Carolina. And they come back and tell him, well, we don't care what you did in Carolina. This is the way we do it here. We've got 5 rings of credibility behind us and 5 Vince Lombardis in the trophy case behind us in terms of credibility. This is the way we want you to do it.
Yeah, and he just looks very uncomfortable here. I know they're asking him to do a lot of different things. They have him playing a lot on the inside, and he just does not look comfortable. He's been I guess you could say, a pretty big disappointment up to this point. But a couple of the other guys who've been here for a while, Jordan Richards, after he got up to a kind of a nice start the first couple of days of training camp. He made a couple of plays. I just think he's dropped way off again. And
he's definitely on the bubble. And I got to tell you, and I know there was a lot more to the play than just Jordan Richards taking a bad angle, but that Corey Grant 79-yard run against the Patriots on Thursday night, Jordan Richards got way too close to the line of scrimmage in a situation where he didn't have anybody behind him. And once he got beat to the corner, it was off to the races. And, that's a little thing maybe in a preseason game to some fans, but to the coaches, that's a big, big deal because this is his 3rd year in New England.
Yeah, absolutely. And it wasn't just him. Landon Roberts chose the wrong gap. And, once he did that, then, the hole was wide open. So it was a failure on more than one level as far as the defense was concerned. And Roberts is another guy. I mean, he at times he makes those big splash plays. He's very physical. He's a downhill guy. The fans love those big hits that he makes in the running game. But, he often guesses wrong where the gaps there are to fill. And watching him, he has as many negative plays as there are positive ones. I know he's only in his 2nd year, but, he's another guy that could be on the bubble this year because of the addition of Harvey Lange.
Well, that's an excellent point, but I would say in defense of a Landon Roberts, he was at his best last year when he had the likes of Donta Hightower on the field with him at the same time because, when you have somebody back there quarterbacking the defense who knows where you're supposed to be, I think, that frees up a Landon Roberts to be a lot more successful. Well, I want to thank you, Steve, for taking time out on my maiden voyage, if you will, on the Patriots Beat podcast here on CLNS Media. It's really been a pleasure talking with you. Where can fans hit you up on the internet or online or wherever you want to go to learn more about what you have to offer?
Well, they can find me on Twitter at SteveB7SFG. That's my Twitter handle. And you can find me on PATSfans.com. I write there. And I write some for a military magazine as well. And, it tries to keep me busy. But, Mike, thanks for having me on. It's always a pleasure talking to you and, sharing our experiences down at training camp.
You got it, Steve. We will talk soon.
All right. Thank you.